I'm Susan Hay Patrick. I'm Vice President of the Board of City Club Missoula and Chair of the Forum Committee, and I'm filling in for our President, Heidi Sterrett, who has that upper respiratory thing that's going around. So Heidi sends regrets, and we rescheduled. You may know that we usually meet on the second Monday of every month. In order to accommodate our speaker schedules, we rescheduled for today, and we really appreciate all of you turning out, even though we changed the date up on you from our normal meeting time. So thank you for your willingness to be flexible. Also, welcome to our international scholars here through the Mansfield Center SUSI program, Study of the U.S. Institute. We have educators from 19 countries who are dispersed around your tables. They've been here for a couple of weeks already, and they are studying our education system. So please make them welcome at your tables. We're very glad to have you all here. So if you're a City Club regular, you know our forum, but for those of you who are new to City Club, we have speaker presentations for roughly 30 minutes. Then we break. It's an opportunity, if you haven't done so already, for everybody to introduce yourselves to each other at the table, and then come up as a table with a relevant question for our speakers. And Larry Brame there in the back will be our roving mic handler, and he will go from table to table, and you can ask your table's questions. So just as a reminder, we're looking for questions, not statements, not announcements of upcoming events, or not candidate forums. We want you to get to your question, especially because we have so many tables. And then, oh yes, and my notes also say this is not a time to soapbox. And then those of you from the media who are here, if you would wait till after the presentation to ask your questions, our speakers are happy to stay afterwards. I want to thank all of our sponsors. You saw them, they're at the table, on the table tents at your table, and their logos were up here on this slideshow. We really could not do what we do at City Club without so many sponsors. We want to welcome Opportunity Resources to our list of sponsors, and thank them for joining the team. And if any of you would like to become a member or a sponsor of City Club, please feel free to fill out the forms on your table, and you can give them to the gentleman in the back, or the gentleman moving to the front, Robert, or to Eric, our City Club coordinator, in the back. We will keep obviously your credit card information confidential. And please remember to tell a friend or colleague as well about these monthly forums where we discuss topics of interest to our community. Also, please check your email in the near future. We are sending out a survey to better understand our City Club Forum attendees' experiences and expectations, and we ask you to please fill out the form. It won't be too long, but we want to guarantee you the best experience going forward. So please take a few minutes to do that when it pops into your email box. Next month, our forum is the new Missoula Public Library. Its development and plans, a major project about to go on in our community, and we hope you will join us for that. And of course, the obligatory, please remember to silence your cell phones. So, we have two outstanding speakers today, and they were worth waiting for and rescheduling till today. Racene, Friede, and Jeff Mao. Racene will go first. She is the executive director of Glacier Country Tourism. She grew up in the small cattle town of Ovando, and that's what instilled in her inherent love for all things Big Sky Country. Armed with a bachelor's degree in communications from Montana State University, she has spent most of her career promoting the travel and tourism industry in Montana and getting people to come here and experience Montana. Since 2007, she's put her more than 26 years of marketing experience to work as the executive director for Glacier Country Tourism and has played an active role in making tourism one of the top 2 industries in our state. In addition to leading Glacier Country Tourism, which is one of Montana's largest DMOs, destination marketing organizations, she's also actively involved with Tourism Matters to Montana, Voices of Montana Tourism, and the Blackfoot Challenge. So Glacier Country Regional Tourism Commission, which does business as Glacier Country Tourism, is a nonprofit organization, the officially recognized tourist region or tourism region for Western Montana. And its task is to effectively market the region as a travel destination for domestic and international travelers, and educating the public about the power and the role of tourism while encouraging respect for our wonderful, outstanding natural environment and our quality of life. So they cover 8 western Montana counties: Flathead, Glacier, Lake, Lincoln, Mineral, Missoula, Ravalli, and Sanders, Glacier National Park, and other communities, businesses, organizations, and governments. And they're right here in Missoula, which is a wonderful central location, so they can implement their strategies and build strong relationships, not only with those in their region, but all across Montana. Jeff Mao first came to Montana in 1979 and spent 4 summers working for the U.S. Geological Survey, doing geologic mapping in the Flint Creek, Anaconda Pentler, and Sapphire ranges. He came back in 1998 during the Red Bench Fire, and again in 2010 for a project that I didn't really understand, so I'm just saying for a project. And Jeff has been the superintendent of Glacier National Park since 2013, and I think I met you like your first week on the job up in Waterton at the Waterton Glacier International Peace Park. Remember, it was right after the big article about you in the Missoulian. Most of Jeff's 26-year career with the National Park Service has been in Alaska, where he served for 22 years as a law enforcement ranger, chief ranger, management assistant, and superintendent across 7 Park Service units. Most recently, he was the superintendent of Kenai Fjords National Park and acting superintendent of Denali National Park and Preserve. He's done a lot outside of parks. He's been on the U.S. Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. He also was incident commander on the Gulf of Mexico Deepwater Horizon oil spill, investigator on the Exxon Valdez oil spill in Alaska, and policy advisor to the fledgling National Park Service Climate Change Response Program. He and his family live in Whitefish, where they enjoy all kinds of winter and summer sports. I believe that Racene is going to lead off, so please welcome Racene Friede.
Thank you so much. I really enjoy getting the opportunity to talk with people about tourism. I cut my teeth in the DMO world. Once I graduated from Montana State University, I was hired by the Bozeman Area Chamber of Commerce as the Convention and Visitor Bureau Director, and I did that for 6 years. I then moved to Missoula, where I worked for Blackfoot Telephone Cooperative for 7 years, doing marketing, PR, and sales. And then this opportunity to come back into the DMO world with Glacier Country came up, and I have been absolutely blessed to be able to be here for going on 12 years now. So it's really exciting. The one thing, though, is we don't quite have as high an exposure as some of our partners, such as Destination Missoula and other organizations. So I wanted to start a little bit about who Glacier Country is. And Susan talked about, we are indeed a nonprofit organization. We're not a state agency, and we are tasked by the state to market our region as a travel destination. And then each year, let's see here. Is it on? We reach identified markets and audiences, present them with a unified message, create a desire to visit, and then get visitors to come and stay in Glacier Country. We are the westernmost region in Glacier Country, and there are 6 regions. And we have over 75 communities in those 8 counties, and that is approximately the size of 22,000 square miles, and that's the size of Maine. So it's a pretty sizable area. Destination marketing organizations in the state of Montana come in various different forms. There's several different levels. It first starts off with the Montana Office of Tourism and Business Development, and they are part of the Department of Commerce. Their job is to market the state of Montana as a travel destination. And then what comes down to the regions, and there's 6 regions, and the state's kind of split up into those regions. And it is our job to market our area, our specific region, as a destination. Thank you. Ultimately, new this year and it happened with the legislative session, is Indian Country region. And that is housed in the Department of Commerce with the State Tribal Economic Development Commission. And they are tasked with not only helping to develop tribal tourism, but to promote it and then work with all the other DMOs for us to help them promote it as well. And then in the state, there are the community-based DMOs, and there are convention and visitor bureaus. Those are generally funded by BEDDACs and officially recognized by the state. There's 19 of those across the state. And then there's tourism business improvement districts, and that is a locally controlled funding mechanism. It is its own separate organization, and sometimes they are connected with a CVB, sometimes a Chamber of Commerce, sometimes an Economic Development Commission, and sometimes they just stand alone. But they add to the ability of a community to market themselves as a destination. Oops. So how does tourism impact our economy? In 2017, 12.5 non-resident visitors traveled to Montana. And when I talk travel and tourism, I talk about non-residents. We actually don't have a whole lot of data about what resident travel means to Montana. We're going to be getting some of that information for the Institute for Tourism and Recreation Research here at the end of the month, and I'm going to be poring over that and sharing that out as soon as possible. But when I'm talking about visitation, I'm talking about people who do not live in Montana. That 12.5 million visitors spent $3.36 billion in direct expenditures in our Montana communities. Those travel and tourism dollars actually directly supports approximately 39,000 jobs, indirectly supports another 14,000 jobs, and that results in $885 million in workers' salaries in the state of Montana. And approximately 75% of every non-resident visitor dollar is spent in our local communities. What does that mean to those communities? Well, the tourism industry works to promote and preserve the qualities that make Montana a great place to work, to play, and to live. And those travelers add to the lifestyle that we as Montanans enjoy by allowing for better air service, more restaurants, more shopping, more events. My gosh, look at all the different events that have popped up over the years. Better state parks, better maintenance, all these different things. The population of Montana could not support all those activities if it was not for those non-residents coming into our area. So they are very much enhancing our lifestyle. Travel expenditures. I referenced earlier the $3.4 billion that those people are coming and spending. Well, here's a breakdown of what they are spending in each county. In Flathead and Missoula counties, those are obviously the largest areas where they are spending their dollar. But interestingly enough, 60% of the expenditures in our region come from the 2 counties, Flathead and Glacier, where Glacier National Park is housed. That is a tremendous amount of money coming into this part of the region. Now, Glacier Country and Yellowstone Country, well, we have the crown jewels of Montana. We have Yellowstone National Park, we have Glacier National Park. We are the most highly visited areas in the state of Montana, respectively getting approximately 1/3 of those 12.5 million visitors every single year, but we also enjoy 1/3 of those expenditures. Each one of those regions enjoys approximately $1 billion of new revenue into our economy every single year. So we talk about the Montana brand, and really what is that? it's our offerings. It's specifically the nature, the communities, and the residents that blend together to provide services and experiences that help share our marketing messages, that align with our 3 brand pillars. And I am so passionate about the brand pillars for the state of Montana because they fit us. They are us. And it's really exciting to share those. And they are more spectacular, unspoiled nature than anywhere else in the lower 48. Vibrant and charming small towns that serve as gateways to the state's natural wonders. Breathtaking experiences by day and relaxing hospitality by night. Now, the Montana brand is Glacier Country's brand. And more importantly, to those 3 brand pillars, it's the Montanans who are actually delivering the authentic experiences that help turn our first-time visitors into return visitors. We can promote the heck out of all that stuff, but it is the people of Montana that provide the actual experience, and that means so, so much. So we talk about, shifted a little bit, we talk a lot about the brand. Well, we don't really talk about, we don't say all that stuff that we talked about in the brand pillars. We use big, expansive photography that tells the Montana story. We don't add a lot of words to our advertising. We let our photos do the talking for us. And then we support the landscapes that we're utilizing in those ads. And then we provide subsets of the charming towns and the activities and all the things to do, whether it's on our webpage and our travel guide and our PR efforts on our social media. That's when we're pushing all the other information out to our visitors. And we use Glacier National Park as our icon. It is our calling card. It is our namesake. It is what we were named after. So that obviously has an impact. We have also the blessing, and like I said, Yellowstone and Glacier, those are the 2 icons for the state of Montana. So we're lucky to have it here. But as I'll talk about later, there's an impact to that. We allow the image to do the talking. We always convey the awe and calm, the beauty and wildness, but we also try to combine that with the safety and accessibility, because the people we're talking to, sometimes they've never seen completely dark nights. They don't know what stars are. They don't know what wildlife is. So we try to make sure that they know about that before they come. So who are these people? Who are we talking to? Well, primarily we're talking to leisure visitors. They're active, mature, they're family, some are individuals, mostly they're return visitors. And then there's also business visitors. There's meeting and conventions, reunions, weddings, higher education, that is very much a part of tourism, and healthcare. Kalispell Regional Medical Center actually has a medical tourism person on staff, and they promote Kalispell as a destination to come and get their medical procedures done and then to stay and visit and explore, and they're very, very successful at it. So, of those non-resident visitors who are traveling to and through Glacier Country, what are they doing? Well, they're spending approximately 6 nights along their trip. The vast majority, 71%, are actually being spent in our region. Another 13% is actually probably in the Glacier Country area or the Yellowstone Country area. So they're doing some park-to-park visitation. So they're traveling actually all across western Montana. The primary reason that they're here is more leisure, vacation, followed by, and I always find this interesting, they're visiting friends, relatives, they're attending family events. And then the next one down is they're here for just kind of passing through. We've got lots of really fabulous interstates and in a big state, and you got to travel through it. So what are they exploring? What are they doing while they're here? Well, first off, they're scenic driving, they're day hiking, they're watching wildlife. More and more so, they are camping and they are RVing and they are getting out and enjoying nature. They aren't necessarily staying in our hotels and motels. They are out and about. And they're also visiting all the other things. They're eating in all the great restaurants. They're actually shopping in our grocery stores. They're fly fishing. They're hiring outfitters. But first and foremost, the top thing that they're doing is they're visiting Glacier and they're visiting Yellowstone. We know that 15% of the people that are here are first-time visitors. Our stats and our figures show that 78% of those first-time visitors fell in love with Montana, and they plan on coming back within the next 2 years, which results in a really great stat. It's a great conversion stat for us, is 72% of the people that are coming in are return visitors. They love it. They love who we are, and they're coming back to visit. So when we develop our creative, we use one overarching campaign that represents the region throughout the year. We tie in what we are most known for, and that's the great outdoors, where memories are built and connections are made, not only with Montana, its communities and people, but with one another. We're a place where people can actually connect with one another. Outside perspective is the tagline of our current campaign. Outside perspective begins with a road less traveled, begins with a scenic route, with the pull of a paddle, with an altitude adjustment, or for our group meetings, with a breakout session. Everything that we do is based on research, and we have lots of resources available to us, but we do lots and lots of research to support what we are doing. And we are very strategic. This allows us to be very strategic. And then we're able to talk about more our target market, our demographics, our geographics, and our psychographic markets. So who are we targeting? The people we want to attract are people who love to travel. They have the money to travel, and they like to do it, and they like to do it often. And then first and foremost, Glacier Country does not market in our region. We're not our audience. In fact, with BedTech dollars, we're not even allowed to market in region. So 90% of our promotion efforts, we as residents that live here do not see. You may see our travel guide, you may come across our website, but you won't see all the things that we're doing to push people to request those or to our website. Our travel guide is a tiny, tiny portion of what we're doing. So using extensive research, analytics, and visitation stats, we've identified these markets, key markets and the regional drive markets. Many of our key markets are also airline hubs where we have direct flights, so we are ultimately supporting existing and new direct flights. We'd actually been targeting Texas for years. Well, with last year and our direct flight to Dallas, we sunk a bunch of more money into Texas to try to support that flight and make it so it stays here. And not only us, but our partners do that as well. We try to support all of our flights and make sure once they get here, once they come in, we keep them. And those people that we seek out, they're seeking what is unique about Montana. They are not looking for Disneyland. They're not looking for New York City. They are seeking authentic experiences in Montana. They want to learn about our history, our culture, and they want to know the people. They want to get to know us. They want to get to know and do what the locals do. Not only do they love the beauty of our state, they especially love the people and the hospitality that we show them. They also love the seasonality of Montana and all that those seasons offer in terms of experiential travel. So what are our goals? What are we trying to do this for? First off, we're raising awareness of our region as a destination. We're increasing visitation, specifically in our shoulder seasons, and that may vary depending on the community of the part of Glacier Country that we're talking about. We're trying to attract new visitors and repeat visitors, getting them to stay longer, explore more, and do more, and then come back again and again. To remain a destination, we must continue our promotion efforts. There is a lot of competition in the travel tourism industry, and we have all the states and Canadian provinces in the Rocky Mountain region that have like tourism assets. They have similar things to us. Sometimes the landscapes look pretty similar. As much as people think that the tourists are coming just because Montana is just that great, they're mistaken. The Montana destination marketing organizations and the businesses that work so hard to market our region and state make visitation happen. If it were to go away, the visitation would drop significantly, and all the money that they bring would drop at the same rate. And this is proven through other statistics that that's happened in other states. So while we know we need to remain competitive, we also understand that increased visitation, especially in Glacier National Park, is a double-edged sword. So several years ago, we started working with Superintendent Mao and all of our other industry partners in that area on trying to figure out what we can do to soften the impact of our promotion efforts. 3 years ago, we stopped actively marketing Glacier National Park in July, August altogether. We do not market those 2 months out of the year in Glacier at all. In fact, we focus our marketing on other parts of Glacier Country, like Lake Como and the Bison Range. We are trying to encourage people to visit those areas and kind of lessen the number of people that are overwhelming Glacier. We shifted our warm season marketing so that it is spring and fall, and we don't even work with travel writers. There's a lot of travel writers that want to come in and go to Glacier during those months, and we don't host them. We offer to assist them in the spring and summer if they want to do that. But we also spend a tremendous amount of time informing people that Glacier Country or Glacier National Park is open year-round. It does not close down once the Going to the Sun Road closes down. The winter activities are fabulous, as are the other things that you can do throughout the year. We work together with our partners to strategize on how we can have consistent messaging, staying aligned with what the park is saying and doing to help manage expectations, because the people we're talking about are in the planning stages of their trip. So we can help get that information out to them in advance. We can help them understand that there might be some things to look for. Maybe we encourage them to come at different times of the year and not necessarily during those peak times. We're also continuing our efforts to move our visitors not only around the Flathead and Glacier County areas at peak times in the park, letting them know that there are other public lands and there's other things to do in and around the park, but we're trying to push them throughout our region in all of Montana. Montana's blessed to have so much public land, and much of it offers spectacular, similar recreations as Glacier. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jeff, because he's going to be talking about what some more of those things that are happening are impacting us with. Thank you.
Thanks, Racene. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and we are great partners that work together. I see Racene numerous times during the year as we talk about how we position things and look at how we serve our visitors well. And again, we like those repeat visitors. We like visitors that have a great time, but we want to make sure they have a positive experience. And it can be challenging at times, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges and opportunities we have as the National Park Service at Glacier National Park in regards to that. So a lot of my talk today will focus on some of what we learned last year, because last year was such an amazing year at Glacier. In the month of July of 2017, our visitation at Glacier National Park actually exceeded that of Yellowstone. And, that's pretty remarkable. I can tell you, nobody really envisioned that Glacier would ever exceed Yellowstone in terms of visitation, even if it's just a month. But it's hard to imagine. But 2017 was a pretty interesting year. It was a year of extremes, as I would call it. And this is a slide that shows a couple images from last September 20th. And on one side of the park, we had the ongoing Sprague Fire, and at Logan Pass, we were plowing snow to try to get the pass open to visitors. So, and I think that just sort of typifies much of what one of our challenges are, which is something that we don't have any control over. It's what the weather's going to do. And just how, the extremes sort of really push us in terms of how we manage the park. And of course, Sperry Chalet was one of those events. The burning of Sperry Chalet was one of those events last summer that took us all by surprise and was a great loss to all of us. I think it almost felt like you were losing a member of the family when we all learned that Sperry Chalet had burned. But It burned during the Sprague Fire, and since that time, we have come such an amazing distance in terms of where we're headed on the future in the next 100 years of Sperry Chalet. And I gave a presentation 3 or 4 days ago, and many of the key stakeholders in the operation of Sperry Chalet, we were standing around afterwards, and we said, you know, none of us could have imagined last September that we would be where we are today with Sperry Chalet. And of course, you know, as soon as the chalet burned, the very next day I was meeting with members of the Glacier National Park Conservancy who were just wanted to step up and say, what do we need to do? What's the most important thing for us to do? And part of that was to stabilize the structure so we could think about over the winter what we were going to do. And so very quickly they raised over $100,000 and were essentially executed the stabilization of the Sperry Chalet. And so over the course of the winter, we began the process of meeting with the community, meeting with stakeholders about the Sperry Chalet. And through that process, went through our environmental compliance process for what does the rebuild of Sperry Chalet look for. And when we rebuilt, in thinking about how we were going to rebuild Sperry Chalet, it wasn't so much about the architecture of the building itself. It was really about what was important about the experience of Sperry Chalet that needed to be maintained as we look forward through that process. So some of the milestones that we've completed to date, our environmental planning is complete. We've actually awarded a contract for the Phase 1 reconstruction or rehabilitation this summer, which is really, much of it is surrounded towards doing a permanent stabilization of those walls. That sort of Viking ship look on the inside is actually just you know, what we could come up with in 2 weeks, a very short order to stabilize it for the first winter. And no matter what we did, we would have to come back and do additional stabilization. So we are able to incorporate stabilization, and with so much support for rebuilding it as it was, for not making dramatic improvements, for not increasing numbers, but just to maintain that Sperry Chalet visitor experience into the future, we were able to develop a Phase 1 that included that stabilization, as well as put us well on the road to a 2-year completion of the rehabilitation of Sperry Chalet. So we hope that by the end of 2019, the construction season 2019, that the Sperry Chalet will be ready to open in 2020. So that's the plan. Very aggressive. We were definitely pushed along by not only the community, but certainly the Secretary of Interior provided his support in helping us to move forward on such an aggressive schedule. Pretty unusual for the National Park Service. And part of that was clearing the trails, making the area accessible again, and we are just at the tail end of that. So we just have the drift that exists below the chalet to do some treading on that so we can get stock up to that site here. So, you know, again, you know, having partners of all sorts, and Glacier is very fortunate to have the Glacier National Park Conservancy as its philanthropic partner, and their role has been extraordinary in terms of this whole process. And I think this process has also sort of been able to reach out. I mean, they received unsolicited, they received donations, contributions from every state in the union and all over the world came in for Sperry Chalet, because it is considered one of the iconic experiences in Glacier National Park. So that's Sperry. I'll switch to visitation and just start off with this table that just shows what visitation has been like at Glacier National Park over the past 3 years. Really, our visitation has increased almost 40% in the last 3 years. And, you know, Racene talked about, you know, that sort of visitation, even when the Going to the Sun Road opens. For those of you who don't know, usually the road opens late June. And, but if you look at some of our May and June visitations, some years we don't open it in June, it's just dramatic how much it has changed. And for contrast, the last column represents Yellowstone National Park, because historically, we've often followed what Yellowstone does in terms of visitation. So last year, Yellowstone actually had a slight, it was pretty level or a slight decrease in visitation, and we were still increasing at double digits. And even going into this year, what we're seeing is we're at our May of 2018, we're almost 10% increase in visitation over 17. Yellowstone's about 4%, I think. So we're all seeing increases, but there's something about Glacier that's really got a lot of focus on it. So where are visitors going? And this is coming from some 2017 data that was really surprising to us as we looked at it. And with those numbers, again, I will say that 1 million visitors a month, Glacier National Park, we're really not designed to handle that many. And so what we found ourselves doing is actually having to swing the gates at some of our venues, simply because it became a problem of, it's like the fire marshal, too many people in this room. It just really became an unsafe situation. Emergency vehicles couldn't get in. You sort of get almost into gridlock. So we began in several locations throughout the park having to swing the gates. And we didn't know what that was going to be like, but we learned a heck of a lot from that experience. And here's up in the North Fork. The North Fork of Glacier National Park is always thought of as sort of being more rustic and a whole lot less use. And when you look at this table, or this chart, this graph actually shows when we had to implement those restrictions on traffic, when we actually had to swing the gates. And so we were sort of keeping track of that through the summer. I actually started tweeting, and I was working with my public affairs because we just sort of did this on the fly. Hey, let's tweet every time we hear from dispatch we have a closure. And so we did that all summer long, took turns doing that. I was tweeting this weekend, if you were following. But really, the University of Montana, who we've had a long relationship with in looking at visitor use and our planning for the Going to the Sun Road, actually looked at all our Twitter feeds going back and actually put together some tables showing what, or these charts showing what that data told them, and showed that, Bowman Lake just shows where that sort of crunch time is, or when we have to implement those restrictions. And this is great data because this helps us set expectations for our visitors this year. We can use this data. We share this with a lot of those frontline visitor folks, the folks at hotel front desk, rental car agencies. This is data that they can use to tell people, look, here's what to expect if you're going to Glacier National Park. If you're one of those late risers, just anticipate congestion, difficulty finding parking, or maybe even a closed gate. Mini Glacier Valley. We actually had to swing the gate 16 times at the Mini Glacier Valley. And what we found that situation was very interesting, because it was really because there's so many day users in Mini Glacier that haven't gotten to their cars and left the valley yet. And then we have the folks coming into the valley for that evening. And so we were just getting this sort of overlap crunch period that we needed to pull apart. So what we learned is we would close the gate and tell folks to come back in 2 hours. And actually, what was surprising is how accepting the public was of that. They understood the situation. They knew there were other opportunities they could do. They didn't have to go into Mini Glacier just at that time. Businesses in St. Mary and Babb came to me and said, "You close that gate anytime you want," because it works for us. And so, I think it sort of has us thinking, okay, if this is an ongoing situation, what are some of those additional opportunities? The Blackfeet have put up this beautiful new wayside on the reservation, but for most of our visitors, I think they go there and they think it's a Park Service wayside, and it really does a great job telling the Blackfeet history and the culture associated with the St. Mary Valley. So, where are hikers going? Sorry, this is a little bit hard to read. The numbers are small, but clearly, those trails that are right along the Going to the Sun Road corridor are the ones very impacted. But we'll have almost 1,500 hikers a day on the Hidden Lake Trail. Avalanche not far behind at 1,200. Almost 1,000 visitors a day will do the Highline Trail. And We saw that a lot, you know, Logan Pass parking. We had never seen Logan Pass parking fill up so early this year. It would fill up at 8 in the morning, and then no cars would leave for about 5 or 6 hours. And what we discovered is we were actually displacing a certain segment of visitors that were just driving across, wanted to stop, use the bathroom, go into the visitor center and move on. That, you know, so that's got us thinking about how we can manage that parking a little bit differently. How can we make that balance between the different types of visitors, the different segments of visitors that come through the park? So again, at Logan Pass, it's not uncommon, especially between the hours of probably 11 and 2, that oftentimes we close the parking lot. I mean, we allow cars to come in and hover, and you know, when our staff notices that cars are hovering for 10 minutes or more, they'll just close the parking lot and let the situation relax a little bit before opening it up again. So that's another kind of traffic restriction that we've been using this last year, and we'll be tinkering more with it by using more of those timed parking sites so that the folks just driving through wanting to take a picture and use the bathroom will have that opportunity. But here's what's really interesting is you look at what we did at Bowman Lake, you look at what we did at Logan Pass. We implemented traffic restrictions at Bowman Lake just as often as we did at Logan Pass. And, you know, really speaks to sort of the character and the change that we're seeing in the North Fork. As the increased visitation and people try to spread themselves around, its impacts on other areas. Certainly the visitation at Bowman Lake is nothing like it is at Logan Pass, but nonetheless, it reaches capacity just as often as it does at Logan Pass. So some really interesting things for us to look at and think about. And you know, again, I think it's useful in terms of setting visitor expectations. Even with 1 million visitors in a month, our visitor satisfaction results are just as high as they've ever been. And I think that speaks to who is coming to Glacier. And while Racene mentioned that only about 15% are first-time visitors, for our staff, we're really noticing those first-time visitors because it's the way they use the park. It's the things that they do. You know, well, you know, some of the things people do that we see more and more often is when they're hiking on the trails to have little external speakers going, you know, and that's just a little bit different. You know, there's a lot of sort of people are really driven now to get selfies of themselves up at Iceberg Lake or Upper Grinnell Lake, you know, and some of our staff say, you know, at Iceberg Lake, they can't even get in to clean the restroom because there's always a line of about 15 to 20 people waiting to put their bathing suits on because they're so driven to sort of get that photo for Facebook. So, you know, social media, you know, has its positives and negatives to it. But one of the things I think is that, and Glacier, I think in particular, because it is so scenic, lends itself to social media, to that so well that, you know, I think that's part of the drive of what we're seeing is the impacts of social media. One of the other things that I think we're also seeing that tell us that maybe we're getting an increase in people who've never been to a national park before is the amount of search and rescue that we end up doing. And we had a first time ever, a very unusual situation, but we had 15 days in a row where we had to do carryouts of hikers between Granite Park and the Loop. And a lot of people, I think, when they're on the High Line and then they realize, okay, this last 4 miles, it's all downhill, probably won't take more than an hour. And they don't realize it's the hottest, longest, driest 4 miles you've ever walked. And yeah, people just have lots of issues. So, you know, we've had to respond to that. Now we have what we call preventative search and rescue. We put somebody right at the front of the High Line just to make sure people realize, take that extra time, drink up when you're at Granite Park, fill up your canteens. Don't think, you know, it's just a short walk and you'll be there in an hour. So yeah, how do we set those expectations and this is actually about what we're going to be doing this year, which is a little bit different than what we did in 17, that, we're going to try to use more timed parking, we'll continue to use the restrictions, trying to do more with real-time information. This is where we hope to turn social media around and use it and get a little bit better at Twitter, I'm hoping that we'll have a map that actually, sort of shows our trails and our parking areas, and, if they're really congested, they'll show red, and areas of the park that aren't so congested, they might be green, but so, we're getting to that point where I think it's almost like, what's the road and weather for Glacier National Park going to look like today? And again, partner opportunities. They're on a large scale, wide scale, neighboring scale, working with the reservation, working with state parks. I know when I stand with my state park partners, they'll tell you they're seeing the same sort of things in Montana state parks. They are seeing that same bump up, the national forest. Our geotourism partners, Glacier Country, we work with them all on again, for me, ideally, Glacier is kind of the tip of the iceberg into this vast area we call the crown of the continent. There's so much more to be seen in terms of communities, in terms of extraordinary natural settings. So I know that it's Glacier that will put somebody in Chicago in an airplane to get here. But once they get here, how do we help them understand the bigger picture of what's possible? And it's only by working with partners. So again, with our messaging, this gets to our messaging with our visitors, the idea that, even though they may have a real strong focus on getting to Glacier National Park, I think it's really important, how do we help them plan more thoughtfully to have a plan B in case they don't want to put up with the congestion, in case they want to have a more open experience. Setting those expectations for congestion delays and difficulty parking, using data, using social media. Again, that real-time information. Webcams is one place. We started actually pointing some of our webcams at parking lots just so that people would actually see that, boy, it does get busy there. Carpools and shuttles. Safety, again, as we understand that more of our visitors have never been to a national park before, I think that's very new for Glacier, given its sort of reputation from 50 years ago. We could be doing a better job with those first-time visitors to help them really understand, if they've never been on a hiking trail before, what they can expect. And, again, there was an article that came out probably about 2 weeks ago that talked about sort of this new Leave No Trace 2.0, this idea that leave no trace in terms of impacts to the environment, in terms of human waste, in terms of litter, in terms of fire scars, things like that. But really now it's almost to the point of changing how people use it, to be more respectful of others. How do you share, that vista with others? So I think that's kind of underway amongst different parts in the outdoor recreation community. And of course, Glacier's not alone with high visitation. This is from Zion National Park. Zion's probably even more critical than Glacier, just in terms of how acute their situations are with congestion and difficulty finding parking. But certainly, again, Yellowstone, Rocky Mountain, Grand Canyon, Yosemite, those are all, Acadia actually is probably most like us currently. And Acadia may actually be the closest to implementing almost an entire park reservation system. So that's still being discussed out there, but Acadia has the opportunity where they're actually, I think somebody told me they're about a day's drive from 40% of the population in the United States. So pretty remarkable. And just some examples, real time, this is what we're tweeting. Okay. Webcams, different organizations, how they're trying to provide visitors some of that real-time information. So just wrapping up here on, I think this is more about that longer-term conversation. I think some of what we're seeing at Glacier is not just to destination visitors, but it's also this big undercurrent that's going on with the demand for outdoor recreation. Outdoor recreation today is growing at twice the rate of other sectors of the economy. Outdoor recreation, representing 2% of GDP in the United States, is twice as much as agriculture in the United States and twice as much as mining and timber in the United States, and oil. So there's just a huge demand that's not just destination visitors, it's also about second home visitors, it's also about retirement services, retirees and where they tend to go, and the interest and the demand to be near public lands. So I'll end it there.
So now we have our microphone rover, and take a few minutes at your tables to introduce yourselves to each other and formulate a question for our guests, and then we'll reconvene for question asking. Okay, Larry, our roving mic man, are you ready? Who has the first question?
I am ready. Oh, Karen does. Karen has one, and she's independent thinker.
Hi, Susan. Thanks to Racene and, was it Jeff? That was really interesting information. I'm a Montana native, and I'm blown away particularly about the Bowman Lake information, because that's like my secret little corner of the world, but it's not so secret anymore. But you guys had some interesting thoughts that you were trying to market more on the shoulder seasons because of, you know, the influx of tourists in, let's say, June, July, August. And yet, like I was up in Glacier for Memorial Day weekend, and I was on both the west and east sides of the park, and really there were no services open yet. So how do you, my question is, if you're marketing shoulder season, it was okay with me because I'm from here, but how are you telling the tourists that Glacier is open when there are no services open?
Very good question. Actually, in the off season in many of our parks, especially even in Yellowstone, there are certain times of the year where there are no services, and so that's just something that we talk about. But in the winter, the snowshoeing and the cross country skiing and such, there are outhouses, so those are open. What we're finding though is, 5 years ago, there was lots of parking, you could go on the trail and you weren't seeing many people, but now we're seeing increased number of people that are coming in, and gosh, your snowshoe tours have been full almost every single time the last couple winters. So we are being successful in doing that, but again, it's expectations. Mm-hmm.
Next question.
Stand up, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I don't think I will be able to keep it simple. Okay. I'm Nerma from Montenegro, Susi scholar. I'm glad I'm here. And my question would be, as far as I understood, Yellowstone and Glacier parks, you work separately. They work on the other, on one side, and you work on the other, but you're both in one country. Do you have some common goals, you're both in the same state, so would it be nice to, if you have too many visitors, to maybe make some campaign or policy to make people go to visit both parks so that you work together as a state parks?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, in 2016, we celebrated this centennial of the National Park Service. And, we rolled out this Find Your Park campaign. And it was successful. And I think parks like Yellowstone and Glacier sort of got even busier than they were. But it also helped increase visitation, because really the majority of the national units of the National Park Service are actually small to medium-sized national parks or historic sites throughout the country. And at Glacier, for example, in our park newspaper, we actually have a whole page that's dedicated to all the other national park units in Montana except for Yellowstone. And you know, again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to expose our visitors to places like Little Bighorn Battlefield, Bighorn Canyon, Grand Cours Ranch, Big Hole Battlefield. I do hear from superintendents who say, you won't believe how many visitors walk into Grand Cours holding the Glacier National Park newspaper. So, you know, we do have a podium or a path for us to drive visitation to the lesser visited areas, state parks as well. Yeah, I spend a fair bit of time with the superintendents of Yellowstone talking about, you know, shared issues together. But we are, you know, probably almost 8 hours drive apart from each other. So our audiences tend to be, our visitors tend to be, there's some overlap, but also they're different as well.
Okay. Another question from this table.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Juan Carlos Diaz. I'm from Nicaragua. I'm from the Susie Scholar. So I was discussing, okay, definitely you have a beautiful state here, so we're about to know these places. But my question is in terms of tourism. I mean, I am part of the 15% you were talking about, I mean, who visit this place in the first time. I'm planning, okay, I don't know, to come back 2, 3 years possibly, but is there any kind of tourism agencies in which we can go directly there and take us, okay, to the outsiders, I mean, not from the country, but from other countries, and visit these amazing places that you have? Because so far we know these places because of the help of the coordinators, but what happened to those that don't know this place and they want to know specifically the most beautiful places you have here, but I don't know if you have any kind of agencies that, or tourist guide or something that can show us the most beautiful places you have here.
Scream help.
That's another great question. We actually partner with an organization called Rocky Mountain International, and it is a group of North and South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. And we have literally people on the ground in Europe, throughout several countries of Europe and Australia, that are marketing these areas as a destination. And then we also partner with Brand USA, which is the United States destination marketing organization, and so we're marketing to everywhere that they are advertising as well. So we're doing some outreach. We're just not quite as popular as the Disneylands and the New York Cities yet, but we're getting there.
All right. One more from this table.
Hello, thanks Racene and Jeff for coming to speak to us today and sharing all this great information. It's really interesting to hear. I think our question is probably more for you, Racene, and we were talking about, you know, clearly your mission's been successful and you've gotten a lot of visitation and increased tourism, but we know from being local residents that not everybody's super excited to share in that mission who lives here, and they sometimes put bumper stickers on their car that aren't always super welcoming and maybe put out attitudes that aren't also super welcoming, and we just wondered if your organization does anything to educate or speak to those sentiments and convey the values that we receive from tourism.
Yes.
Yes.
We do, and we do hear some of that. We are very active. I spend a lot of time out on the road talking to civic groups and chambers of commerce, working with communities who haven't quite figured out how they can capitalize on tourism. We've got one of our counties is Mineral County. 92% of that county is public lands, and they're struggling economically. And so I went up there and talked with the business group a couple of months ago about tourism and talked to them about some opportunities for them. So we're getting out, we're doing things. There's also 2 organizations that I'm highly active with. Voices of Montana Tourism is a group of partners from all across Montana, and we do exactly that. Our entire goal is to educate and let people understand how much tourism means to us, and really let them know that without tourism, things would be a lot worse for us in terms of not only our lifestyle, but our economies would be struggling that much more.
It's on? Yes.
Wearing my local government hat, wondering if you guys have thought about advocating and helping communities outside of some of the smaller communities get a sales tax to capture some of the, all these people coming into town. and it's great, and they really help the local businesses, but the taxpayers are, it's really on the backs of taxpayers who are, funding their roads and their services. So wondering how we can help local communities fund some of those infrastructure improvements via sales tax.
Local options taxes, sales tax, whether it's state or whether it's local, the one thing that's going to have to be is that community is going to have to vote that in. That is something that you can't just implement. A government just can't vote it in. It's got to be the people and the voters. The one thing that I caution people on is there's no such thing as a tourism tax. It is a tax on everybody. If you implement a tax in a community, you need to realize that the services that that local community or that local government decided that they want to tax is going to be on the locals just as much as the tourists. So again, that's going to have to be a decision that that community itself takes on, and it's not going to be an easy one. It really isn't. Whether it is a local tax, whether it's city or county or the statewide. It'll be interesting to see what happens in this next legislative session. There has been chatter about a general sales tax. So it's something for all of us to really bone up on, understand fully, and make educated decisions when you go to the voter box.
Okay, I think we have time for another question. Anybody got one? I've been around the table. Oh, yeah. Since Karen spoke for herself at this table, we'll let Peggy.
We have several questions, but I wanted to ask, neither one of you mentioned Canada. And Glacier Park and Glacier Country borders with Canada. Not yet our full enemy, I guess, but I'm just wondering, do you send them up to Canada? Or we have Waterton International Peace Park, and I'm wondering about sending people north.
So, yeah, actually, we work closely with Waterton, and actually, Waterton actually had to swing their gates a few times last summer as well. So, and there's always, we don't have great data to tell us, how many Canadians are coming down, particularly to those our east side venues like Many Glacier and St. Mary, but we do know there's quite a few. And so there's some old measures that I was told when I first got here. Well, the number of visitors you'll get to Glacier sort of depends on the exchange rate, depends on the, what the price of gasoline is. It depends on a number of those things. And really, I think some of those measures are getting washed away again, but I think this huge undercurrent that's carrying all of us, whether we like it or not, and that's that sort of demand for outdoor recreation that's going on all across the West, and how it's changing our communities, how it's changing our visitation. And I think it's seamless across Canada from what I've seen in terms of either our visitors going to Canada or our Canadians coming down to visit us. So, yeah, so we do talk a lot about that, particularly in this Crown of the Continent context, because the Crown of the Continent is, Missoula to Banff. And, that's where we're trying to create this sort of bigger picture, more opportunities, I think, in that context. So.
You're okay.
We didn't have a question at the table, and I didn't have one until Karen came up with hers. And Racene, I agree with setting expectations. I think it was a good answer. But Jeff, what are we doing? We are increasing the border, the edges of the season, right? We're getting more and more. You didn't speak to whether or not we're planning to have services on those edges of the season, or increasing services.
Well, that's a good question. I didn't really talk about budget a whole lot either. So, but when adjusted for inflation, the budget at Glacier National Park is the same as it was in 2005. Our staffing is almost exactly same as it was in 2005. So, and you look at the sort of the increase in not just visitation, but the issues we have to deal with, aquatic invasive species, wildfire, things like that. So really the opportunities for additional investment are out there. The only problem is how do we maintain it? How do we operate it? So quite honestly, I look to services and partners outside the park. And we've seen that in the Flathead Valley. The increase in the number of overnight accommodations in the Flathead has just skyrocketed. And, so it brings a different dynamic to Glacier because we have so many more day users now than probably what we had 10 years ago, just on that dynamic alone. But it sort of relieves me of having to develop a new hotel in Glacier National Park, which I'm not sure I'd want to do. I mean, I think we're pretty much built out. So.
Well, I think we're at 1 o'clock. So Susan, thank you.
Thank you to our speakers. Thank you all for being here. Please come back on July 9 for an update on our exciting, ambitious library project. If you're interested in joining City Club or becoming a sponsor, please take the information at your table. And thank you all so much.